Welcome to Reflections. Once again, my name is Patrick Tomlinson. I'm your host. And with me is Julian Jingles, who has consented to come back and stay with us and tell us a little bit more about his life story. In the first segment, we heard about Julian, who I like to call Jingles. Everybody knows him as Jingles. His early life, his time in Kingston, growing up attending Kingston College. And so there are many, many aspects to Julian. Julian is also a film and television producer and is heavily involved in music production and the redevelopment of downtown Kingston, where he was born. So this segment, we're going to spend a little time focusing on your activities there, Julian.
Thanks again for having me. Much appreciated.
So first, you have a book here called A Reason for Living.
Yeah.
And do you want to tell us a little bit about it?
Well, it's a novel.
Okay.
It's a work of fiction
Mm-hmm.
that I started writing in 1966.
Right, we did
I was
say
16 years
Yeah,
old.
yeah. What prompted you to start writing it?
Well, I guess, as I said to someone, I think I really was born to write,
Mm-hmm.
really.
Mm-hmm.
Because I have been writing stories from ever since I can remember, I was much influenced, like I said earlier, that my family, my uncle, my cousin,
Mm-hmm.
were avid readers
Mm-hmm.
of novels,
Mm-hmm.
and I was exposed to that.
Mm-hmm.
So between age of, say, 8, 9, until I was in my early mid-20s, I read anything and everything
Mm-hmm.
in novels. I
Okay.
read all of the big writers. And so I was always, and then also specifically to this, is that I was inspired by beauty. And I say beauty in the sense of the beauty of the females that I was exposed to as a teenager. There were 3 young ladies that were living in Rollington Town at the time. And just looking at them walk, the grace, I mean, it inspired me that I was to tell some story about that relationships. And, I had friends who were going through other kind of relationships. And I had a mind exposed to romance and social interactions and injustices,
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
politics and that was always central to my immediate family, to discuss the rights of workers, working class rights.
Mm.
My father was a trade unionist.
What trade union was you a member of?
The Bustamante
Oh,
Industrial Trade
BITU.
Union, yes.
Okay.
He was a port worker,
Mm-hmm.
and my father was exposed, and from I have memory, he was a part of the 1938 struggles that brought about modern Jamaica
Mm-hmm.
in terms of the working, rights for the working people.
Right.
He marched and fought alongside Alexander
The
Bustamante and
Mm-hmm.
St. William Grant,
Mm-hmm.
and Miss Longridge, as they called her,
Mm-hmm.
the silent partner.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the things that I was exposed to from I was a child, and along with the beauty, and along with the Rastafari, and along with the whole movement of the American civil rights and
Movement.
that.
So the book all encompasses that?
Yes, it touches on all of
Mhm.
those things. It does.
Okay.
It's really set in the 60s.
In Jamaica?
In Jamaica.
In Kingston?
Jamaica.
Mm-hmm.
It's about, I like to say, the revolution that did not take place in Jamaica, but it was on the brink of it
Mm-hmm.
at that time.
Mm-hmm.
You will recall what happened in Coral Gardens in '63.
Right, Montego Bay.
Precisely.
Mm-hmm.
Those were things that had great influence on me. And as a person who was reading novels and exposed to all kind of things, you develop a story
Mm-hmm.
from that, around that.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the people. And also, I must admit that I really started to smoke the weed from I was a teenager. And that helped in expanding my mind, I think. So
That's a controversial subject. So people say
yeah.
it has inimical
Yes,
effects. Some say.
and I agree that to some it depends on your chemical and
Right,
whatever else
make
things
up,
that
right.
make up. But I was able to deal with it, you know, and even in discussions, because I remember as a teenager, 13, 14, 15, when we would be exposed to discussing things internationally, locally, what was happening to the people. The people were denied rights, the people could not, you know, the whole class prejudice that existed in Jamaica. These are things that we were discussing at herb camps.
Right. Okay.
Influenced by Rastafari.
Okay.
So those are the things that really impacted me. And like I said, driven by the beautiful females that helped to mold and develop into a reason for living.
Okay. Okay. Now, you came to the United States in 1972.
Yes.
And you did many things. You also wrote for a number of publications. And you participated in a number of film productions or...
a few.
Yeah.
Documentaries,
you were telling
films,
me. Or, yes.
Mainly. I came to the U.S. to do two things. I came to write. I started working on a screenplay. I am a lover of Westerns.
Right.
And from I was a little child going to matinee and all that. And that's how I really...
What were some of the theaters you went?
I went to all of them.
All of them?
I went to all of them. I remember one time, more than once, in one Saturday, I went to like 4 different theaters to see different shows.
4?
One Saturday.
Yes, 4?
From 10 a.m. in the morning.
Yes.
Until I left the last one like at 9 p.m.
In the night?
In the night.
How old were you?
I was maybe about 12.
But that's interesting, eh?
Yeah.
Look at the times. I mean, you could...
Yeah.
A 12-year-old coming home at 9 o'clock,
Yeah.
and nobody bothered you.
Well,
so it shows
there was some bother.
Yeah, but from when you got home.
When I got in,
that was the only concern you have.
I was too prepared for that. And then I would do it. But they knew that I loved the cinema.
Right.
And that's how I really even got the name Jingles. And that's why I use it as my pen name.
Right.
It was at Elliston Primary School.
Okay.
In the 50s, there was a character that was a part of our matinee, Saturday morning matinee. There was Wild Billy Hickok and his partner, Jingles.
Okay.
And because I was always, like when we had breaks and what have you, I was the one who would gather the group together and come up with the skits. And we would be either cowboy and Indian or police and thief or detective. But somebody, bright person, said, him going like Jingles, you know.
And the name stuck.
And it stuck with me from 1956. Right? So when I started writing professionally, I put together, Julian is really one of my middle names. It's really Julian in Spanish. My godfather and my uncle.
Right, you did say
gave me
from
that
Cuba,
name.
right?
Yes. So it was Julian, and because of the impact and the influence that they had on me, I decided that my pen name would be Julian and Jingles, and that's how Julian Jingles came about.
Okay.
But we had a tremendous time thinking and writing and imagining, and I wasn't really hampered or taken away from doing these things. I would be telling even stories. I remember one night I told a story. It was supposed to be a novel that I read to a friend, 2 friends. One was a bigger man and one was more my age. And I made the whole thing up. So
just going on.
Yeah, just give it to them, you know. And so it stuck. So that's why I said I think that having been exposed from early to literature, and I mean I read all kinds of literature, from Mom to Shakespeare, Sheridan, name it, Mays, I read. And so that, because to write, one has to read.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I really started reading before I realized that I would be a writer, but that's how it turned out. I've always been writing from age 16 professionally.
Well, Julian, you have interacted with so many interesting individuals in the Jamaican music industry, and I know you're going down to visit Jamaica to look about a project that is very close to your heart.
Yes.
Do you want to share a little bit of
Sure.
that with us?
And thank you for. Well, it's more than one project, I must admit. The Sounds and Pressure Foundation, which I chair and I'm one of the co-founders of. We focus on bringing attention to the cultural impact that downtown Kingston has on Jamaican culture, in particular the music. Downtown Kingston is the birthplace and the maker of the business of Jamaican music. The musicians.
When you say downtown Kingston, how do you define that geographically, or how from where would you consider downtown Kingston? In your estimation, in your mind.
I would say from, in terms of the music business, I would say from let's say Princess Street in the west over to like Church Street. And
really lower Kingston.
And from North Parade. Not North Parade, from North Street down to the waterfront.
Okay. So it's a small geographic area, relatively.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
In terms of the business of music was centered on Orange Street in downtown Kingston. There were spin-offs all over because you had Bournemouth over in East Kingston. You had Chuckamo Lawn dance hall over in West Kingston. But the business, when reggae music evolved in the 60s, the mid-60s.
Would you say you're part of that, or in
well, I have privilege.
Close to it, or
yes,
yes?
Yeah, I
so you can speak authoritatively on, you think so?
I can speak with some level
yes,
of
which is interesting. Yeah, yes, because you're part of it.
I was,
yes,
I was the leading journalist,
right,
covering the cultural Jamaican music industry.
And you're not you're not writing from it outside, but as a product of that same.
Precisely.
Exactly.
Precisely. I was groomed for that. Like I said, even my mother and my father, I was, exposed to all of that, coming into that. So I came into writing because of, I remember as a child, as a preteen, early teen, I would go out to Foresters Hall, where I went to school 10 years earlier as a little kid. And when they had the blues dance, the big dances on the Saturdays, I couldn't go inside. But I would be outside with the man selling the cane or, whatever, the Crown and Anchor man, the Tree Card man, and listen to the music, the latest releases. Because in those days, the radio stations weren't playing Jamaican music. They weren't playing Jamaican music. So it was left to the sound system throughout Jamaica, not just Kingston. Throughout Jamaica, it was a sound system that played the most pivotal role in what Jamaican music has emerged to today. If there was no sound system, what we have today would not be existing.
Okay. So this particular project,
I'm making a documentary film on Jamaican music.
The development of Jamaican music.
Music, right.
From
popular
what?
music.
Oh, popular.
From, yes,
okay.
Popular music. Beginning with, interestingly, Mento. Because Jamaica's first major exposure in world music was through Harry Belafonte. Not many people knew that he had a Jamaican connection.
Right.
But that's where he learned the music. He's an American kid who was like Don Shirley and many others. Part of their parentage were Jamaicans, or both were Jamaicans.
Yes.
In Belafonte's case, I think he was Bahamian and Jamaican, but he was born in the U.S. So his mother, his parents sent him back to Jamaica. And interestingly, he ended up at your high school. He went to Wolmer's with the late Edward Seaga, who was one of the prime ministers, who also played a significant role in the Jamaican music industry. So the documentary that we are doing, and I am expecting that we can begin shooting, will have to touch from Mento. People like Lord Flea, those were the first, along with Belafonte, who had recording contracts with major recording labels, singing calypso, as we know it, we call it mento in Jamaica.
Oh, but it's the same thing.
Yeah,
Okay.
well, calypso is the wider West Indian
Right,
Caribbean.
but it has
Mento was
right.
the, yeah, but it's it's popular folk music, and that's really what first gave Jamaica exposure to the world.
Right.
Harry Belafonte.
On the way over here, Jingles, you're telling me a little bit of the history of the name reggae and your take on it. From your point of view, what you know, and how it came about.
Well, there are about 3 or 4 people that have stake claim. Clancy Eccles, Toots Hibbert, Ernie Ranglin, and there may be another, but those are the prominent ones. One of the things I heard, and when I heard the story first, it wasn't really tied to Toots, but that the word reggae came from the word used in Jamaica, streggae. A streggae is a loose woman, pretty most of the times, very sexy, attractive, but didn't have that great amount of moral principles.
Right.
And for whatever reason, that was how it first came to me. This was in '67, that reggae came to replace rocksteady music, because rocksteady evolved from reggae, and then reggae evolved from rocksteady music. Toots Hibbert claims that he's the one who first gave it that name. I know for a fact that Clancy Eccles, because at the time I was writing a column called Record Shop that covered the music, the releases, the actual records that were being put out by Jamaican record producers. That was a weekend Friday Star. So I was fully involved with the makers. I would go to the recording studios. Sometimes I would go in the week and listen to the records that were being cut. And then I would always get one of the things I loved about writing Record Shop is the vast amount of music that I got and that I could give away. That I remember when I was leaving Jamaica in the early '72, about 2 or 3 of my colleagues were fighting to get control of
your collection.
My column, not just the collection,
but the column,
but the column that I was writing,
right.
Because it then gave them exposure and access to getting the kind of music. Because it's not just Jamaican music I was getting. I remember now that the people like Ken Curry, Federal, Duke Reed, Treasure Isle, Cox and Dodd, and Ken Curry and others, Byron Lee, Dynamics. These were guys, brothers, and who were distributing all the music that came into Jamaica, that were produced in Jamaica. So I had a hell of a wide collection because I would have to hear the music. You couldn't just tell me that you have this and this is what you had was to give me, and I had then to those music home to play the music and then write about them. So, but back to the well, not a controversy, but Ernie Ranglin has also claimed that he was, I have another close friend that I think you were telling me on the way over, the Goldings, who did Swing Magazine.
Right.
Swing Magazine is considered like the Bible of Jamaican music at the time. And they covered intensively the music that was coming out. So I remember people like Clancy Eccles was one of the first producers that I recall, who was actually in the studio making, and the reggae music that we have come to understand and listen and dance to now wasn't really, it was a very jumpy, scratchy music in the beginning. Toots, Clancy, the Ethiopians is one of the, and quite a few, were involved. But I tell people, for me, the first time that I remember seeing the word reggae was on the B-side of a 45 single that was put out by Treasure Isle,
What year was that, roughly?
It's about 66.
66.
That
So
I saw, yeah.
about that time it began to gel.
Gel.
Roughly.
Yeah, it was breaking. And it was an instrumental, which was a B-side. I don't quite remember now what the A-side was. It was a vocal. But when I saw reggae and when I got it for the entire night, it was on a white blank label with just reggae written. I just played it. But it's Jamaica. You know, it's Jamaica.
Okay.
So the documentary film we're working on is entitled Respect Due. And it covers the history of Jamaican popular music from ska, rocksteady, reggae, and dancehall.
Okay. Now,
it's a 3-hour
documentary, but you're gonna, it's gonna be in segments.
Yeah, we're trying to get it down to 3, to shoot for 3.
Now, Downtown Kingston has some challenges.
Yes.
But how do you feel your efforts can at least go in the direction of addressing some of these social challenges? And what's your vision?
Yes.
What do you see?
A very good question, Patrick.
Yes.
Very good. I thank you for posing that. As a product of Kingston, wider Kingston, Downtown Kingston, and understanding that it put out a thing like Jamaican music that has really impacted the entire world. In 1995, my wife and I went on a vacation to New Orleans. And it was then that we were both struck with the similarities. I mean, you know the music and you know what New Orleans was and all of that, and you read these things. But when we went and experienced New Orleans and saw the similarities of New Orleans and Kingston, and saw what the tourism and the music and the culture was doing for the tourism industry in New Orleans, was when we decided that I would devote my life as much as I can to having Kingston be recognized as a cultural mecca as it relates to the music. And really that's what we are continuing through Sounds and Pressure Foundation. I think the first thing to address your question is that you have to let the people who live there understand and appreciate the value of what they have there and let it also benefit them. So if you have cultural tourism in downtown Kingston, you have to have facilities, you have to have residencies, you have to have people who are living there, who are making money out of that industry. I mean, right now you have people, I remember about 3-4 years ago, I was downtown there, and I met a young man, Patrick, who came all the way from Mexico. He's a young trombonist, but he's also a chef. And he hitchhiked and did whatever he had was to do to come to downtown Kingston to just see where Prince Buster building is. Because he, as a young musician living in Mexico City, and moved by what he was reading and hearing and all.
And this is not somebody whose first language is English either.
He was about 30-something.
You said Mexico City, right?
Mexico, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. His first language not even English.
No. And
so it shows the impact.
And that it's not isolated. So I am trying to let the government, and slowly they're gathering, and not just the government, but also the entire power structure. I think one of the problems that Jamaica faces is that the people who make the decisions really don't have that amount of respect for the people who evolved, who created and who put these things out. They don't. So, for example, we are trying hard now, they're naming it names like the yellow or the orange and does whatever. But you have to put money into the creative industries so that people can generate productive things and revenue can turn over to benefit the people. I mean, I have been there, even the same young man from Mexico. He said that, and since, over the last 4 or 5 years as things pick up, more and more people are coming. We have a celebration too called Meet Us on Beach Street, which takes place, Reggae Month is February, as you may know, in Jamaica, Black History Month for us here in the US. And we would go down, and that last Sunday, we highlight, it's a street festival along Orange Street. So we expose the people from all over, Kingston, Jamaica, and travelers coming in to come and experience downtown Kingston and take it from there. They want somewhere to stay.
Okay.
They want places to go and to experience the music live. And so there is, I'm encouraged because there are some younger people now, younger than I am, much younger than me and my crew, because we're getting ready now to write the script out, but we're leaving legacies, and we're working with these younger people who are bright, and they also understand that Kingston has to be refocused.
Okay.
And the government is slowly but surely doing the same.
Okay.
So I am very optimistic, and I have to run back down, but I'll be back, hopefully.
Well, we look forward to see. Yeah. But before you go, as you know, Jingles, the time is always, the clock is always up against us. Yes. So I want to ask you, any final thoughts, very brief, that you'd like to leave with our viewers and the wider world?
Well, I think Jamaica is a very special place. For years, I've been trying to figure out what are the dynamics, and I am not sure yet. I think there may be a scientific thing that deals with the magnetic poles. You as an engineer can, I guess, appreciate that a little. But there are so many things. But like I said, it's a special place because of what has emerged out of that little, that relatively small space.
And for the impact it has had on the world.
On the world. So I think that the first thing is that those who are in the position to should begin to make things more accessible to those who are there, who are prepared to work, and to push Kingston and Jamaica as a whole to the other dimension. Well,
Brother Jingles,
yes, sir.
Interesting conversation, short space of time.
Yeah.
We probably have to ask you to come back, but we are so much in debt to you for taking the time out to come and share some very insightful and your encyclopedic knowledge on the music. Thank you for coming.
And read the novel, because a lot of Kingston is in the novel.
Blessings.
Thank you so much for having me, Patrick. I appreciate it. I'm the law.
Yes. Thank you.
I am enraged, I crackled, I sparkled, I flared up. I am in that fire. You won't be able to put me out.